Good afternoon, and welcome to the next masterclass. So I have Greg and Rachel with me. Greg, do you want to kick off?
Yeah, first of all, thank you everyone for giving up time to join. Particularly if you work in an office and you've had to slope off somewhere, it's hugely appreciated. We never take it for granted. I'm not supposed to be here, by the way, but I was so thrilled to hear how many people had signed up. I wanted to just come along and kind of see the beginning of the chat, but also from me to everyone here to talk about how important I think that these webinars are. I think it's our second one since the Energy Tech Summit. And it means the world to me. When we started the company, the energy industry kept saying, nobody cares who their energy company... Oh, hang on. There's an awful echo going on. Is that everyone or just... is that just for one person? I think it says all okay, no echo. So I think that's just... if you've got the echo, it looks like it's at your end. By the way, here's the hidden secret. Look, behind these octopuses, there's a couple of directional microphones. There you go. Octopus are always transparent. Anyway, put them back there because they're prettier. Look, when we started the company, the energy industry said customers don't care who their energy company is. They just want the lights to come on. And of course, we all want the lights to come on. But the reality, we thought, was that energy was too expensive. We could clean it up faster and we could provide dramatically better service if we actually spoke to customers. And I think that has meant in every single way we do that, whether it be on social media, directly with our teams, who have, by the way, something like 500,000 conversations every week with customers, but also finding ways to have deeper conversations with those who are most interested. And all of it is about learning how we can take our knowledge and access to the underlying energy system, the stuff that we see coming around the corner, for example, electric cars, cheaper and cheaper batteries, and access to policymakers and the media, and bring all of that together with the people who are actually using all this stuff to try and better influence the national debate, create better products and services, and ultimately, better meet the needs of our customers as energy changes. And frankly, I wish it would change faster. So that's why this really, really matters to us. And we don't at all take it for granted that you give up so much time to be here. I won't talk much longer, other than, I guess, look, Phil has been, from the very beginning, absolutely immersed in the forums with customers, personally helping create and lead a lot of our product development. And I can't think of anyone better to talk about all of the smart world. But also, we've brought along another special guest, Rachel. Some of you may know Rachel Fletcher, but she's our head of policy and economics. And some of you may have seen Rachel at the recent Energy Select Committee, where she was very clear and forthright about, for example, I think, Rachel, your bombshell statement was that the way energy policy in the UK is going at the moment is even if the wholesale price of electricity goes to zero, bills are not going to come down unless we radically change the way the system works. And that needs to be done urgently. That statement made it into a lot of media. In fact, I think I saw it on the front page of the Times, as well as leading stories on the BBC. So I think a lot of people have asked about not only smart tariffs and smart energy, but also about why we're seeing electricity prices going up and gas prices going down in the next price cap. So I thought, Rachel, thank you to you for coming along. And like last time we saw you in public was facing a barrage of MPs and ministers. So this time, not just MPs actually, and media. And this time, actually, far more importantly, here with customers.
That's great. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
We've got a slide for Rachel.
I should say I'm meant to be disappearing in a sec, so don't take offence.
No, yep, great. So Rachel, you joined us to talk because Ofgem have just announced the latest cap that applies to flexible tariffs. And so I wanted to get your perspective on that. It was a bit of a surprise. The rate went up when we were expecting it to come down. So if you could just tell us a bit about what Ofgem have done and what some implications of that are.
Yeah, thanks very much for inviting me along. And yeah, much rather be talking to you than talking to a bunch of MPs any day. And especially nice not to be on live TV as well. So yeah, look, those of you that follow energy prices in a lot of detail might know that last week Ofgem announced the new price cap that will come into effect in January. Actually, on one level, it wasn't a very exciting announcement. They announced a 2% increase, which for a typical customer is about £3 a year. But actually, underneath that quite boring announcement was some really interesting and important stuff. The first is that we do need to remind ourselves that energy prices are still a lot higher than they were before the energy crisis, so about 40% in nominal terms, higher than before the crisis. So we all know that many people are struggling to pay their energy bills. But the second interesting thing, as Greg alluded to actually, is that underneath that price cap for a dual fuel customer was actually a big reduction in gas prices, about £30 a year, with the increase coming entirely from electricity prices, so about £33, £35 a year increase in electricity price. Now, obviously, that matters if you use a lot of electricity, and it really matters if you believe, like we do, and I think a lot of you do, believe that the secret to getting off fossil fuels and solving our carbon crisis is actually rapid electrification. And the bigger the gap between gas prices and electricity prices, the harder it will be to electrify rapidly. So we've currently got a price ratio of 4.2 between gas and electricity. That's electricity unit costs, 4.2 times gas. After January, that will be 4.7 ratio. So bad news if you believe that electrification is the way to save the planet. The third big thing that was sitting in that announcement was actually the driver of bill increases was not wholesale prices. Now, over the last 5 years, typically the main reason the price cap has gone up is because the whole electricity wholesale cost and the cost of buying gas wholesale has been pushing it up. But this time round, actually, wholesale costs are down, have taken about 30 quid off a dual fuel bill, with the main cost increases coming from government policy decisions. So from January, we'll all be paying in advance for Sizewell C, and we'll be seeing the additional cost of extending warm home discount to more people and at a higher rate. And then the fourth thing sitting underneath that overall price cap announcement that you might find interesting is that actually increasingly we are seeing the standing charge becoming a higher proportion of the bill compared to the unit cost. And that is bad news if, like us, you believe in flexible tariffs. That means that the cost savings available to customers from changing when they use power become less evident. And secondly, as well, in some parts of the country, we can actually pay customers for turning up their demand to suck up excess wind, for example. But of course, when there are fixed costs involved, some of that turn up becomes much more expensive and less attractive. So some really important things emerging through that one simple price cap announcement. I just wanted to finish very quickly by talking about the future. Wednesday, we've got a budget. It's possible we will see government actually announcing that they're going to take some of their policy costs off the bill and cover them from taxation. That could be really good, especially if the focus is on taking policy costs of electricity bills. So look out for that. Let's hope that we see some positive moves from the Chancellor on Wednesday. But in less positive news, much as I said at the Select Committee, predictions over the next 5 years are that electricity bills will continue to rise, even if the Chancellor takes a big chunk of policy costs off the bill. On Wednesday, we expect electricity bill costs to continue to rise. And what we have been campaigning for, and will continue to campaign for as a company, is a much more smart, efficient system with better wholesale markets that make good use of the kind of consumer flex that many of you provide through our flexible tariffs, and a system where the cost of new infrastructure, especially new networks, is kept to an absolute minimum, protecting customers and making sure that we have an affordable transition that is good for the economy as well as good for the planet. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. I mean, the numbers are up there, so obviously everybody's been commenting. We're reading the live comments, so keep sending us through the comments as we go through this. It is a bit of a surprise, those changes, because we were expecting that drop, and the fact that the increase has gone on to electricity rather than gas, and yet wholesale costs have actually come down. So there's clearly some changes happening here. We think there is too much going on to policy onto the fixed costs. So that impacts our smart tariffs, where we're trying to encourage all of us as consumers to charge cars when the energy is particularly green and is at a lower cost and things. And this kind of goes in the opposite direction to that, which is a little bit kind of contradictory to that kind of drive that we want to get to renewable energy, and yet the cost structure is going in the opposite direction. So there's clearly some change that we need.
Yeah, I mean the overall policy costs. So some of the social schemes like the warm home discount, and the cost, for example, of the contracts for differences that many renewable generators benefit from. I mean, that is adding to electricity bill payers across the country, and that includes businesses. That's adding about £15 billion a year. We're asking government to take a long, hard look at those costs. Some of them we shouldn't perhaps be paying as a country. So do we really need to be paying for first of a kind technology like carbon capture and storage, or should we be waiting for that to be proven elsewhere before adding that to customer bills? But we're also saying, government should be really thinking seriously about how much of those costs they're recovering from electricity bill payers as opposed to gas bill payers, because the more that's on electricity, the harder it is to get the rapid electrification that we really need. And whilst, I can see some people in the chat saying, well, if we're paying on our energy bill or we're paying on our tax bill, it doesn't really make much difference. But overall, we have a progressive tax system, and recovering some of these big environmental and social policy costs through energy bills is regressive. And especially, as I said, if it's all lumped onto electricity and not onto gas, it's going to slow down the adoption of electric vehicles, heat pumps, etc., etc.
Okay. So format for the rest of this. So we wanted to start with Greg opening, Rachel giving an update because we had that Ofgem announcement on Friday. And now we're going to switch, and I'm going to go through the masterclass that we advertised. I'm going to touch a bit about on some of the smart tariff changes, but there's not much to cover on that because we're still reflecting on what the Ofgem changes mean. I know you've got to go because you've got other sessions to get onto as well. So you now got me for the rest of the, we've got 45 minutes left to go. So I'm going to cover what are my top 10 things related to smart tech and smart tariffs. Keep the questions going because we're capturing all the questions here, and I will try and make time towards the end to go through as many questions as I can. We've had questions sent into us in advance, as well as those that are coming up on the chat in front of us as well. So paint a bit of a picture. Rachel's talked a lot about the policy changes and things. What we're seeing is our energy system is changing from an old system like this to a new system like this. So as we increase the amount of renewable energy, wind and solar, and how that's distributed with our own solar systems on houses and so on, that is changing the way in which the grid works. Very quickly, there's some really interesting stats I'm going to cover in a moment on that change. Rachel talked about contract for difference and curtailment of wind if you look at the Wasted Wind website, this is the latest figures this morning from that site. We've spent something like 1.2 billion curtailing wind and paying for gas generation elsewhere. So on the 14th of November at 6 p.m, I took that screenshot on the right. That was the peak of Storm Claudia 10 days ago. We paid £820,000 to curtail wind generation, but we then spent another 2.9 million on gas generation elsewhere in the country because we couldn't get the wind down to where it was needed. So the total since the beginning of this year runs to 1.2 billion, which we didn't need to spend if we'd been able to use that wind. And that's what our smart tariffs do, is allow us to soak up energy to charge cars, store it into home battery systems, and so on. Some statistics. So 2025 has actually been a turning point in renewable generation. Electricity has dropped, electricity generated from coal has dropped 0.6%, and from gas has dropped by 0.2%. So that's the first time we've actually seen a drop. This is global figures. Solar has been growing extremely rapidly. So a 31% increase on last year's solar installation worldwide. Wind has increased 7.7, so that's growing as well. Now, because the growth of solar and wind has exceeded the growth in demand, so we continue to consume more energy worldwide, but actually we've added more renewable than we have grown demand. Therefore, CO2 emissions have actually very slightly dropped globally, which is a really interesting statistic. Renewables overtook coal on the generation on the international grid. So a third of energy is now from renewable sources, and coal has now dropped down below a third. That happened in the first half of 25. In the UK, we're at 36% wind and solar, but we're at 50% when we look at, or 66% when we look at low carbon, and we're often peaking higher than that, such as during Storm Claudia. And just to show how dramatically change can occur, in the decade to October 24, we went from 30% of electricity generated in the UK from coal to 0. So change is possible. It can be done. To get on to my top 10, starting in at number 10, I'm going to do a countdown from 10 all the way to 1 here as I go. Since 2017, we've been running a range of smart tariffs, and Greg alluded to the time I've been here. I joined in 2018 through the Agile Hackathon, where a large number of companies were invited to integrate 2 smart tariffs. So that's my background and my journey within Octopus, is looking at all the smart tariffs and the tech that's integrated. That's a lot of what I'm going to cover in this session today. So we've launched a whole range of smart tariffs, which I know a lot of you will be familiar with. So Go and Agile were the first 2. Tracker, giving the daily wholesale market for electricity and gas. The export tariffs that we launched in 2019, about 6 or 9 months ahead of the smart energy guarantee, export guarantee policy. So we're the first with that. The Flux tariff for charging batteries, Snug for night storage heaters, Intelligent Octopus Go, so smart controlling electric cars. The Cozy tariff for air source heat pumps, so the dip and the peak during 4 till 7. The fan club tariff, restricted to the I think it's 4 wind turbines that we now operate, where customers located near those wind turbines are getting a discounted energy according to the strength of the wind, so proving that kind of community element type of service. Shapeshifters on the business side of things, and then more recently the zero bills tariff and the tenant power. And I know we've got a masterclass session coming up on zero bills, so I won't talk more than that. Other than it is 0, but it's a fantastic tariff when we look at properties that have got significant solar and a battery we can control on those. Tenant power is the most recent tariff that we've launched. That allows a tenant to receive some of the benefit from solar installed on a property by a private landlord, typically social housing. And that's really good that we've actually taken this technology now from just maybe those that can afford to put solar or buy the electric car to those sorts of tenants that can really make the benefit from cheaper energy bills. So we work with social housing providers to offer anywhere between 20 and 30% discount to the tenant, and allows us to give a financial return on investment back to that landlord, which might be over 10 or 15 years. And in the social housing sector, that's really important because they are investing in those properties for the long term. And so that longer payback of 10 or 15 years works for those landlords. So a really wide range of smart tariffs. And obviously this is not not the end at all of what we do with smart tariffs, despite the bad news that Rachel's gone through with the Ofgem announcements. But the important point is that we are all looking at how these tariffs, and I say we as customers, are saying, right, this is what we want our electricity system to do. We can see the change in renewable generation, and actually charging cars and using solar systems and so on benefits the grid. That's the point of this, and that should then bring those costs down instead of companies making money out of the flexible markets where we as consumers could be instead. Number 9, Agile and Tracker dashboards. So whoever is on Agile or Tracker may have seen these, or maybe not. So we built online tools for being able to look at what these tariffs are doing and actually go back through the history of the tariffs as well and see how the rates have done. So you can pick up, say, the 14th of November that I shared with Storm Claudia and see the impact of effectively of wholesale electricity through these tariffs. Actually, there are some tools built into here that will allow you to compare your energy cost if you're on another tariff. So if I'm on a fixed rate tariff, I can plug in the numbers into the tool and it'll tell me if I'd been on Agile, then this is what my bill would have been on Agile. But that's actually really hard to do because if I compare my, say, a flat rate tariff and I switch to Go or I switch to Agile, when I switch to those tariffs, I'm changing my behavior. I'm using energy when it is cheap on the grid, Go, overnight, Intelligent Octopus Go, and so on, or with Agile, where we get those dips. And that doesn't then translate when you're looking at historic data to try and forecast what your bill might be on Agile if you're moving from Go or from another tariff. So what a caution on using the tools, because actually you need to look at your kind of profile and think, well, how much energy can I shift? Can I avoid that 4 to 7 peak period to benefit from these tariffs properly? But those that are, and we released the original report back in 2018, 95% of customers are actually better off on the Agile tariff because of the way that tariff works, and if you are able to move your energy out of that peak time period. Number 8, of course, the forum. And I think we've probably got quite a lot of customers on here that are from the forum, so we made sure we invited everybody from the forum. If you're not in the forum, go find it. I haven't put the URL. Yeah, there's the URL, forum.octopus.energy. It is an invite-only forum, so you will see instructions to send a message, which reaches me, and myself and a few colleagues will then send you an invite to join the forum. We tend to use the forum more for real in-depth discussion of technology and tariffs and services and things that's going on in the industry, as you'll see from the screenshot that I took here a couple of days ago. Not really meant to be a place to try and get support on IOGO charger has reaction to the IOGO rates or a query about bills or things, because we want to use this forum more as a place to really get into the nitty gritty of all the different tech and services and things like how our API works, interesting products and services that others come across. But also, if you've created something, publish it in there and share it and get other people to try it out. And you'll find me frequently in the forum commenting or reacting. Or if you do have a question and you want us to look at the bill, then it is an easy way to get hold of me directly. And of course, anybody that has joined this now has my direct email address as well. Is that a good idea? So that's the forum. Number 7. So I mentioned the API. So we have an open API, and that is at developer.octopus.energy. And there are hundreds of companies and individuals that have done things with that API to get your half-hour data, to get your tariff and property information and things. And it is a really useful tool to try to kind of get more out of the data that we've got in Kraken. So you know that the tools that I showed earlier on Agile Dashboard and Tracker Dashboard are actually based off that API. We created it as our own example tool based off the open API. And that's really important. We really like the use of the open API, and we love seeing when somebody's come to their Octopus Watch, for example. It's a great app. People that are creating apps and sharing them in the forum or sharing them publicly and so on. Now, I mentioned on the right there GraphQL and OAuth. So there's 2 flavors to the API, GraphQL and REST. REST was the first that we launched when we launched the Agile Tariff in 2018. GraphQL is more recent, more up-to-date API. Just scrolling through there, you can see the permissions that that is available over GraphQL. And it's actually a bit daunting when you look at all those permissions, because the API, it does give you access to a lot of information about your account, probably too much information to your account. And your API key that you use to access services or tech that's integrated to that API is like a password. And we do say, treat it like a password. And when you view it on your dashboard, it is strict out like a password would be. And you generate it once, and I suggest storing it in the password manager. But that API key gives a third-party application or service access to quite a lot of information. And through OAuth and on the GraphQL API, we're going to move towards the ability to restrict what third-party applications can access about you. So not the fullest bullets that you can see scrolling through here. And it also means that we can get away from trying to maintain a single API key that you put into this app, and then you've forgotten to store it or whatever, and you generate it, and then you've got to put it into the next app and put it back into the original one, and it starts to get complicated. So we're really changing the way in which that integration works. And that will actually allow us more insight to the sorts of apps and services that are connected through GraphQL and control what they're doing through that OAuth interface. So watch out for changes for that in the next couple of months as we roll out that OAuth version of GraphQL. Number 6, perhaps is one of my favorite. I'm put in at 6. There's still 5 more to go. But microgrids. So microgrids are really interesting. It's looking at, as Rachel covered there, where some of the policy costs and distribution transportation costs are, and the impact on the grid might be alleviated. This is a new build site in Thornwood that we've been working on. Go on our website and you'll find a press release about this site. So it's new build properties that are zero bills. So they have all the right amount of solar on them, they've got a battery in them, and they've got an air source heat pump, and we can operate them as zero bills. But I've highlighted there that there is a large battery on this site as well, disguised. You can't see it in the photograph. The point is that it's a large battery rather than a battery per property. So if there is spare solar capacity on the buildings, that will get stored in that battery. And that means that microgrid is now keeping the connection to the main grid as low as possible. So we've got a much better management of that grid connection, which drives down the cost of the grid service that we're providing, but also it's kind of storing some of that solar energy rather than just going out the grid, incurring full grid costs before it comes back in and gets consumed. So this is brand new. It's the first time that we've done this, but it's going to be really interesting as this grows and we connect things in a real local kind of way. I'm not sure what the battery technology it is, but I'm sure we're capturing all these questions, and we'll answer those as we go through. I'll answer one question: why is that battery better than all of us having a battery? Because this is a microgrid. So if we imagine this as an estate and we've got one large battery and we had an M-PAN and smart meter on each of those properties, as soon as the solar export goes through that meter, it incurs all the transport and distribution costs of the grid. If we've got a large battery on a microgrid, then it's only the local grid costs that we incur to store it in that battery before we send it back. So we bill on the individual properties as what's called sub-meters rather than full smart meters at grid rates. So it makes the use of the grid more efficient. It makes solar more efficient to manage, and it will. I mean, that's ultimately why we can offer zero bills on this particular site. Next, in at number 5. Early adopters pushing boundaries. So we love all of the engagement. So I mean, I take advantage of it first. I'm on Intelligent Octopus Go with an electric car, but I've got an air source heat pump and a solar battery system. And we're really aware that with IO Go, it is possible to find ways around the kind of constraints on it. So how do I get more than 6 hours of cheap energy with extra slots allocated? And probably the worst case, actually, I'll come on to the worst case. I want to just show this briefly because the question here is, what's the best time to charge your car? Which is a bit of a trick question because when you compare to the Agile rate, actually it's all sorts of different times according to what is going on the grid. And that's what Intelligent Octopus Go does, is looking at that because it's based off the same source of wholesale energy and flex market and saying, well, I should charge the car here, and here, which will be different today, tomorrow, and the day after and so on. But unfortunately, what we see is that there is a bit of a bit of a use of kind of ways around the technology just to figure out ways of getting more than the fair 6 hours of charging. When we sent out the invites to this session, we talked about smart tariff changes that we wanted to announce. In fact, because of the Ofgem news, and we're reassessing from that what this means to some of the smart tariffs. So what do we do with export rates? There's questions, do they go up or do they go down or do they stay where they are at the moment? As well as questions about what I'm demonstrating here with IOGO, where a small minority of customers are just going a little bit too far in their use of the tariff and are managed to get longer off-peak rates than we actually expected. In fact, this can be worse for the grid when you see a car charging at 4 p.m. till 7 p.m., for example. So there's things here that we need to change and tighten up a bit, but watch out for news on that later. We're not there yet. We need to finish the analysis of what Ofgem have done before we look at any changes to the smart tariffs. So news to follow, nothing else I can say on that for the moment. In at 4 is data. So when I look at our home with electric car, home mini, solar battery system, air source heat pump, there's an awful lot of data and information that I can get out of my home. So I've got Open Energy Monitor running on our heat pump, which is the top left graph there, and that shows me the current and seasonal coefficient of performance against weather data, whether it's VoltaWare on the bottom left doing energy disaggregation, so how much does my dishwasher, my oven use, and so on, and that helps me figure out if I'm on the Agile tariff. Why am I putting a dishwasher on at 4 p.m. today? If I look at smart thermostats, so we run CADO, which is the second screen on the left there, to run our heat pump. And we actually are experimenting with zonal heating control, which you would not normally do with an air source heat pump because you want that low, steady heat. But again, there's a lot of data that comes out of that thermostat. The 3 graphs on the top center cascading down, those are from Netatmo weather station data showing indoor and outdoor temperature and humidity data about our home. And that actually is really useful for comparing with the heat pump control and the TADO controls that I've got as well. Or I look at the home mini. I took a screenshot when our home was exporting at 5.7 kilowatts just to test the mini and see the live data, and a FLIR camera shot of where our heat loss is coming from. And what's really interesting in this data is that I'm having to use multiple different apps here to get all of this. So I got about 6 or 7 different apps, and I can see the comments there about Home Assistant. Home Assistant is cool, and I have Home Assistant running as well that's trying to collate some of this and integrate it together. There's nothing more I can say other than there is so much data, and there's so much more that we could be doing with data. Yes, my COP is only 2.76, which is small, and I need to increase that. In fact, over the weekend I was looking at this data and thinking, I need to do something about that 2.76 COP. So I have actually reduced the delta T, so the difference between the flow from the heat pump and the return flow, and decreased the flow temperature through the radiators as well. Because what I'm finding with our heat pump is that it is cycling a bit too frequently. That might be as a result of me experimenting with zones control using TADO, but I mean my title is R&D and experimentation, so I will experiment and occasionally have results like that at 2.76 COP. It's heating and hot water, so it's a combination of COP because the Open Energy Monitor can't break out which is hot water and which is heating. Modulating TRVs, yes, not the TADO version. I'm loving the chat, but let's carry over with the chat. We want to get to some of the questions and answers as well. Third place on my list of top 10 is works with Octopus. So I talked about the API and the services and applications and things that are connected to us, and this is just a list of some of those that are on our works with page. The URL is there. Some really interesting tech that we've always been tracking for a few years, such as Tepio. Or Trojan Energy with their electric car chargers that are street but can link back into your energy bill. Heater is fascinating. That's a relatively new product. That's data center on the side of a hot water tank. So free hot water provided through whatever data processing is going through their system. Some of the other optimization systems like HOME and ESME, Energini, and of course the classic power chargers, the OMIs and wall boxes and things, or battery systems, Solax, Give Energy. AirX I've been tracking for quite some time, and I noticed they've recently closed some investment. So congratulations to Agnes for that. That's an air brick. So if you've got a home with wooden floor and a gap underneath, then you've got ventilation, the bricks that allow that ventilation through underfloor so you don't get mold and rot. But of course, you've got the heating on, that's a loss of heat. So what AirX will do is replace a regular brick with a digital brick that opens and closes, and they can link it up to your heating system. So if your heating's on, close the brick up, or if the heating is not running, then let the ventilation through. So that's a fascinating one. And actually, I can just see there's a comment there about Give Energy doesn't integrate to IOG. So this is a mixture of products that are integrated to Intelligent Octopus and some which are using our API to integrate against Go or Agile rather than IOGO. So there's a mix in that site. In it too, Electric Match. The Electric Match tariff is for businesses, and it allows a business to take advantage of named renewable generation and to try and match the generation. I'm just going to click forward to the next slide. So in the top curve there is their consumption in the pink line, and green is the booked generation. And if their consumption is within the generation, then if they're on a time of use tariff with us, then that allows them to get a lower rate because they are matching their consumption to their generation. So this is proving really popular with businesses, and so it's going beyond being just smart tariffs for domestic, but actually into the business side of things as well. The last one actually probably is my top one is actually the labs service. So within R&D, we're experimenting with a lot of the technologies I showed on the earlier slides, and the integration of those as kind of precursors to where Intelligent Octopus is going, or Electric Match is going, or how we launched Fan Club in the lab service before it was moved into Kraken. So there are links there to try out the lab service and see some of the stuff we're doing, and that's where we're kind of running quite a lot of innovation that you might not have seen anywhere. No, we won't integrate labs with IOGO. The important thing with IOGO is that we are aware of the cars that are connected or the chargers that are connected, the state of charge and the amount of charge, and we're sending control signals to those to take up what we've booked as cheap slots through the wholesale market. So we don't plan to connect IOGO up into the lab service. Wonder, I've not come across Wonder. I need to look up what Wonder is as well and answer on that question. Cool, and that's the end of my top 10 masterclass, and we'll switch over to Q&A next. I want to just end that slideshow. So obviously everybody's been putting a lot of comments up in the chat as we've been going through. So I'm going to try and answer a few of these. We've got a question from Gary. I think this came out via email during the last few days. What do you think the future holds for export tariffs in the UK and for Octopus Energy's export tariffs in particular? Agile Outgoing seems better for the grid and environment, but doesn't appear to pay as well as Outgoing Octopus, the flat rate 15 pence version. So the Agile tariffs track the wholesale market. So you can see the algorithms online. You can see the curves from the dashboard that I gave. We launched Outgoing at the fixed rate of 15 pence quite a few years ago, and we've not updated it against the wholesale market in the way that we have with that, the way that Agile does naturally, because it's tracking that wholesale market. Maybe we should look at the Outgoing rate, but it's not on the list at the moment. But it's the Agile reflects the wholesale market is the difference there between the fixed rate version of the tariff. I think the other point I would make that is that, as Rachel was talking about with policies and things, as more policy gets passed on to as a fixed element, then the reduction in wholesale isn't being reflected the way we would expect it to be, and that affects some of the calculations that we make when we're creating each of these tariffs. Next question, Richard asks, on IO Go, if Octopus schedules charging in daylight and my car uses solar generation first rather than the grid, is there a way to make the car charge from the grid instead, so my solar can top up the battery export? And you have a workaround of plugging in the car after dark. So this is quite a common question. If you've got a solar battery system and an electric car, we will send a schedule to the car saying, charge now. And your home battery system, it's designed to balance your consumption. So it will see that the car is trying to charge, and therefore it will try and supply the car. Now, that's obviously not what Richard wants, because he stored that energy from his own solar system, and he wants the grid at the lower rate to charge the car. There are software ways of doing this, but that depends on the integration between the car charger and the solar system to be able to have some sort of configuration or setting that says, don't charge the car from the battery if it's drawing from IOGO rates instead. The only other way to do it is with the wiring control of the with the Henley blocks. I have a blog, so if you look up my own website, philiprsteel.co.uk, I've written an article on how this works on that site. Essentially, you want to blind the car charger from the solar battery system. So if you imagine everything is in series, there's your DNO connection and your meter, then your car charger, then you want a CT clamp here, and then you've got your solar battery system. So your car charger is not seen by the solar battery system, and obviously you've got your home. That's far side. So if the car is instructed to charge, it will not be seen by the battery, and it won't try and discharge to the car. That's becoming more common now for installers to wire these are called Henley blocks that kind of provide that junction between meter, EV charger, and the solar systems with separate distribution boards to each. But read the blog article as I've written more information about that. Okay, this is a long question. Steve asks, I'm on IOGO with a non-smart charger and a Tesla Model 3. Every time I plug in, I get an unable to control notification, then a soon to charge plan notification, plus more unable to control notifications. And so you're seeing that kind of interaction with the Octopus app, trying to charge the car and getting communication issues. We see that from time to time, but it's relatively rare. This is probably a bit more of a unique situation that Steve is experiencing there. As Steve emailed the questions in, we've got his details, and we can look at what's going on with yours, in particular the communication between the IOGO and the Tesla 3. But just to point out that you will frequently see IOGO revising schedules through the day. But what IOGO as a system is doing is saying, right, how many cars have I got control over? What's the state of charge for those cars? Are they plugged in or not? And it creates a schedule and says that's what we want all of our cars to do. But then if something changes, there's change in the wholesale market, or there's a change in cars which are plugged in, then it will reallocate and reschedule things, and you'll get revised schedules that go out as well. But it's fairly uncommon that we see communication errors like that. So we need to look at those individually. You've all got my email address. You can always email if you've got that particular issue, and we'll look at each case uniquely. Greg, another Greg. On IOG, there's the risk of paying full price if the smart charging exceeds 6,000 a day. Could you add an option to cap smart charging at 6 hours? Anyone needing more can bump charge and knowingly pay extra. This would protect those of us who leave our EVs plugged in most of the time, reduce the risk of people gaming the system and jeopardizing the tariff for everyone. So that's a little bit what I kind of was covering earlier on about IOGO, and perhaps taking a bit too much advantage of ways of trying to get extra time out of the car. If you think about IOGO, it's designed to use up renewable energy when it's particularly abundant. You've got that fixed period overnight, half 11 until half 5 in the morning, and then those extra hours that are allocated when we see low energy. So as with the Agile graphs that I showed, we can see those dips. Let's say, right, let's use that. And that's really important, because that is where all of us on IOGO are doing the right thing with the grid. And if you're not, and you're starting to figure out ways of getting around that, you're actually having a negative impact on the grid and increasing costs for everybody else on IOGO. So we're kind of looking at that, thinking, right, we need to put a bit of control around that. So you'll see that at some point. Trevor asks, my old Nissan Leaf 60, 70-mile range qualify for the EV tariff with the wall charger, but the MG plug-in hybrid doesn't. Given it can do similar distance on electric and I want to use it mainly EV mode, why isn't it eligible for the cheaper charging? So the Go tariff is available to anybody with a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. So Trevor and his MG. And there's actually 1 hour less. It's midnight till 5:30 is the Go tariff. But the important point on Go is that we are managing a fleet, effectively all of our vehicles, to consume that abundant renewable energy from the grid, and so we're focusing more on the full electric vehicles rather than the PHEVs with the Go tariff, but use the Go tariff instead because that's available to anybody with a PHEV. Chris asks, why is the Agile Standing Charge disproportionately high versus the other tariffs? So the Agile tariff is based on an algorithm, something like 2.2 times wholesale plus 12 pence, but it varies slightly from region to region. We've not changed that algorithm since 2018, really. It tweaked it a little bit through COVID, but hasn't changed it a great deal. But as Rachel was talking about with the Ofgem announcements, and each time we've seen a price cap change, we've seen how Ofgem are recommending fixed and policy costs and so on are applied to standard charges and to the cost of energy. We've not really reflected in that in Agile. So we've tended to keep the Agile rate a little bit more variable in nature, because that's how we show that we are making a difference to the grid. But unfortunately, that means that the standard charge on Agile is just a little bit higher than it is on the other tariffs, but the rates are a little bit lower. We could adjust the algorithm and bring the standard charge back into line, but we haven't yet. Brian asks, currently my main focus is on tariffs with a combination of LCT units. Currently not always favourable with that specific set. Coupled with the news regarding potential price increases of electricity, I wonder how everything is meant to work to appeal to consumers who want to reduce their gas usage and CO2 emissions. So you've got a combination of LCT, so presumably car, solar, air source, heat pump. Each of our smart tariffs at the moment is tailored to one of those, so it's Cozy or Go or Flux. Agile's the nearest that we've got to a kind of one tariff that copes with everything, but there's probably a core kind of idea that Brian has got there about how do we address multiple LCTs. I hate the word LCT, low carbon tech. I prefer low carbon tech, or smart energy tech. But again, going back to what Rachel was saying, the Ofgem announcement is a bit of a surprise because it says that the electricity costs are going up, gas is going down, but the wholesale costs have actually dropped. There's kind of a bit of a contradiction in the news that we've received there. So keep an eye on what we do, because I actually like the question that Brian has raised there of tariffs that apply to somebody who's got multiple technology. Patrick asks, with all the emphasis on wind not blowing and the sun not shining, why is there no attempt to getting the public to curb demand at times of stress? And look, actually, Patrick, the kind of is. I mean, that's the point of each of these tariffs, any of the ones that I've covered, Cozy, Go, Flux, and so on. That price signal generally reflects when there is high or low wind and high or low solar, and so it's incentivizing or integrating us all to take advantage of that. Don asks, more and more of us have a mixture of eco-friendly technologies, so solar, heat pump, electric car, home battery. How does smart tariffs need to work? Actually, I've answered that one a little bit. Agile is the nearest. There's a kind of an all-seeing, dancing tariff that you can apply to all of those, but there's a bit of a trend with a few questions, and I can see it in the chat about being able to have tariffs which apply to multiple techs. So definitely take that on board and see what we can do on that. Arthur asks, getting an Octopus Home Mini. Our request filtered if your meter doesn't support these. If so, please let us know. We didn't get an in-home display when Octopus fitted our three-phase smart meter. I've requested a Home Mini several times but never received one. The Home Mini works with most single-phase smart meters. I need to go look up where we got to with three-phase meters I'm just not sure off the top of my head if we've integrated the home mini with three-phase meters. So let's note that one and I'll come back to it. Steve asked, is there an official line on whether multiple EVs are now supported on Intelligent Octopus Go? The website suggests not, but the app seems to let you add another vehicle. We will let you add another vehicle, but it's still only single car on IOGO at the moment. But obviously, we've seen the requests for supporting that, so let's see where that goes. Steve asks, I have had a lot of frustration trying to get IOGO working with the rest of the house, particularly with Wallbox. Is there a possibility that Octopus could look into simple webhook integration with Home Assistant and leave me to make it work? There is the Bottle Cap Dave plugin into Home Assistant that does kind of tracks the IOGO schedules a little bit. That's great. It works. Some are using it. It's not quite so straightforward for IOGO, because for IOGO to work, we need to know the car that we're connected to, the state of charge, and the rate of charge, because it's important for the service that Intelligent Octopus is to know this is what we've got available when we're purchasing wholesale energy. So it's not quite as straightforward as publishing the rates into Home Assistant. We obviously do that with Go and Agile and Cozy and Flux. You can pull the APIs, but particularly Agile, and that's popular within Home Assistant. But it's not so straightforward for the Intelligent Octopus Go tariff. What are the challenges? So Mayank asks, what are the challenges in implementing a zero standing charge for electricity usage across the UK? We're a little bit constrained here with what Ofgem do with their policy decisions and policy costs and so on. If we would, and it's also down to the markets as well. So if we move more cost from the standing charge onto the tariff, then you end up with a tariff that is more expensive, and obviously that then has a difference to what you're actually consuming. So if you're a high consumer, then a low standing charge and a high tariff then affects you in the other way to a higher standing charge and a lower unit rate. So there's a bit of economics around where policy costs land and how the structure is created for the standing charge. So I can't really answer if we'll get to a zero standing charge. The nearest we have is the zero bills tariff, because that doesn't have a standing charge, and that's because of the amount of solar and the use of the battery that goes onto those properties, or in the microgrid scenario that I covered, the large scale battery that's included in that microgrid. Peter asks, is AC V2G charging using EVs about to start taking off, and can this be a game changer for balancing the grid? Yes, we launched the Nissan Leaf with the Wallbox. Again, I think it was Wallbox charger and a power loop several years ago, and that actually proved quite successful. We have Charge Pack available. We've made the announcement at the last Tech Summit with BYD. Certainly with BYD at the moment, and I know that somebody emailed me after we were supporting other vehicles, and I'm just probably going to comment on the chat there and tell me who it was that I was interacting with over email. So it's only the BYD that we've launched that with, but I think that will come because your car has a larger battery than the solar battery system that you can charge and discharge. So I think we will see that really grow. John asked a question. Today was the first time I'd seen Octopus API outage, but realized one thing seems to be missing: a public state. That's interesting. That is really rare that we have an outage on the API, but I'll take that note because it could be worth having an outage or a status report on the API with so many things that are connected to that API now. So thanks for that feedback, John. Another John asks, how important is distributed storage such as house batteries to the renewable energy drive? I want to be part of the solution. even if only by 10 kilowatt hours. My personal opinion, it is, and there's something kind of, it's kind of like a good feeling that you've generated your own solar energy and then you've stored it and then you've used it at other times of the day, and actually that through export you're able to push it back onto the grids too. So that's what the flux tariff encourages, or even just using agile import and export. So you know, I'm a big fan of home battery storage. If we look at microgrids, then a larger battery is actually more efficient in terms of cost and installation than a set of smaller batteries. But I think batteries have got a big place to play in all of our tech and in how the grid works. You know, the slides earlier where I showed the change from old to new generation grid shows that we've got a lot of distributed and intermittent renewable generation and all storage methods. So whether that's a battery, hydro generation storage, compressed air, look up Cheesecake Energy, fascinating product using stored energy from repurposed diesel engines. There's so many ways of storing energy, so we're going to see a real big growth in storage. So you're right to take part with your own home battery system. I'm watching the time. I'm down to about the last 3 minutes, and the questions keep flooding in. So we may have to go to kind of blog style article and answering the rest of the questions. But I'll keep going for another couple of minutes until we finish at 1:30. Steve asked, please can you make it a little easier to enroll a Tesla Powerwall in your app unless you're on a flux tariff? A number of threads online suggesting people have done this accidentally and are then surprised when Octopus takes control of the entire Powerwall. So that will be sign up probably to the IO Flux tariff. That's interesting actually that there's that kind of feedback that perhaps it's just too easy to accidentally enroll on the Powerwall tariff. So we'll take a note of that and have a look at that. We've got maybe Steve will reach out to you and just check the experience that you went through. It looks like Greg's going to join me again. I'm going to ask one more question, then I think Greg's going to cut me off in a second. David asks, is it possible to have heat pump tariffs for prepayment meter customers? Oh, I don't know the answer to this one.
I think it's something we've been looking at. I don't know the latest, but
yeah,
you know that's the list.
Yeah. And I'm going to pick one more. Let's go with Neil Jackson. Neil asks, can you see Octopus introducing a tariff that works for people with both heat pumps and an EV and addresses the spark gap? So the spark gap being the difference between electricity and gas, and what Ofgem has just announced doesn't really help with that. We really need to see that kind of changed so that we can make those heat pumps far more competitive against gas. You know, we should be getting off gas rather than having that kind of bizarre scenario of wholesale rates have come down and yet electricity has gone up and gas rates have come down. And I think we'll be campaigning against that. Yeah, I think I'll stop there. It's 14:29. Greg?
Well, first of all, thank you, Phil, and thank you, everyone. I've had the odd check-in to see how things going. It sounds like it's gone really well. But let me just move over to the microphone so you can hear this. But it would be great just to get any quick feedback now. I'm not looking at the camera because I'm looking at the screen with all the comments. And, you know, any feedback from everyone here is stuff we can use to plan what we do next, as well as specific ideas for products and services we should be working on. I mean, everyone's just, that is a very positive.
Give Phil a pay rise. Did you see that one?
I mean, it's Phil's wife, I think, said a pay rise, but yeah, the
2 pay rises.
Okay, we'll talk about that outside the room. That's great. Okay, well, in which case, look, certainly from us here, from me, genuinely hugely grateful to everyone for giving up the time to join. I think if we can keep building on this, that'll be great. You know, we're not always going to have, what's the word? You know, great backdrops. The changing the price cap is a good example of the stuff we actually want to be able to reverse. But to be able to take the conversations that customers have with us here and use them in the feedback we give to politicians and to regulators, I think it's going to be really powerful. So hopefully we can it actually makes some good come of all this for everyone, as well as actually better serving customers and building better products. Anything from you, Phil?
No, I mean, it's been great to actually try and answer all the questions. I'm amazed at the amount of chat we've got going on here. It's just really good to see that kind
Do we
of
get a recording of all the chat as well as the video? We do, don't we? Yeah. So that will all be downloaded, and then we can scrutinise it as well.
And I'd like to write a blog article out of this as well and publish something.
There you go. That's we don't know about Phil's pay rise, but he's definitely going to write a blog. That's pretty cool. Okay, great,
cool. So I think we're good. So there's the next masterclass come up in another couple of weeks. That's going to be Hannah covering zero bills. So watch out for news it'll come direct from Hannah's email address. Maybe this one came direct.
Hannah was actually on the One Show last week, wasn't she, as well, on Zero Bills Homes. It was absolutely fantastic. So and thank you to the team for doing all the audio visual as well. Cheers, everyone.
All right, thanks so much. Cheers. Bye.